Amanda and Derek, newlyweds in the blush of early marriage, had just returned from a romantic honeymoon in Santorini. Their adventure overseas had cemented their bond, and they were now eager to establish roots as a married couple. Amanda, a striking figure with flowing raven black hair, had hazel eyes that held a mischievous glint, mirroring her curious nature. Working as a librarian, she loved delving into the mysteries of the past and had an insatiable appetite for stories, both told and untold. Derek, on the other hand, was a beacon of stability and strength. Standing a head taller than most in a crowd, his imposing height was complemented by a rugged beard, giving him a mysterious air. His deep blue eyes, however, betrayed his gentle nature. As an architect, he had an innate ability to visualize structures and spaces, and he aimed to design buildings that told stories of their own. Their personalities, seemingly at odds, were in fact complementary. Where Amanda was spontaneous and spirited, Derek was measured and methodical. Their friends often commented on the balance they brought to each other's lives. Their shared laughter and whispered secrets were a testament to the depth of their connection. In their search for the ideal home, they chanced upon the historic Belmont building. Nestled among modern skyscrapers, this architectural gem from a bygone era stood as a testament to the city's rich past. The Belmont had tales of its own, with its stone gargoyles guarding the entrance and ivy-covered brick walls. Apartment 9C, located on the top floor, was their dream home realized. Its large bay windows promised breathtaking views of the city skyline, while the ornate wooden paneling and a grand fireplace hinted at the opulence of the past. Though the apartment seemed too grand for their budget, the listing price was surprisingly affordable. The agent had mumbled something about previous owners moving out quickly, but they dismissed it as mere talk. After all, it seemed too good to be true. They attributed their good fortune to newlywed luck and eagerly signed the papers, unaware of the chapters their new home would add to their story. Their first evening in the sprawling apartment 9C was everything they had dreamt of. The weight of the day's move behind them, the couple decided to settle in. Amanda, drawn to the grand fireplace that was the centerpiece of the living room, decided to kindle a warm, inviting fire. The flames flickered, casting a gentle golden glow across the room, making the polished wooden floors gleam. On the other side of the open concept space, Derek took to the kitchen, his culinary skills coming to the fore. The aroma of roasted garlic and herbs began to waft through the air, hinting at the delectable meal he was preparing. As the evening progressed, they played soft music in the background, the melodies intertwining with their shared laughter and the crackling of the fire. However, with the sun fully set and the world outside bathed in the inky blackness of night, a sudden and inexplicable chill permeated the room. What was initially a comfortable warmth from the fireplace now seemed insufficient to stave off the growing cold. Amanda, pulling her shawl tighter around her, felt an unease she couldn't quite place. From the corners of the room, and just beyond the reach of the firelight, indistinct shadows seemed to flit and dart. These weren't the regular play of light and shadow. They seemed almost sentient, as if watching the couple. Derek, noticing Amanda's discomfort, followed her gaze but saw nothing out of the ordinary. In an attempt to ease the tension, he quipped, "Probably just the light playing tricks. Or maybe I'm getting really good at this ambiance thing with my cooking." He chuckled, trying to infuse some levity into the situation. Amanda, however, was not so easily placated. She had always been sensitive to energies, and right now every instinct was telling her that they weren't alone. She replied, her voice a whisper, "I don't know, Derek. There's something off." She hoped her feelings were just the result of fatigue. But deep down, she feared their dream apartment held secrets neither of them were prepared for. The sun poured into the apartment the next morning, casting the previous night's eeriness into the realm of forgotten dreams. As Amanda began unpacking their belongings and organizing their new home, she stumbled upon a dusty, leather-bound photo album tucked away in a corner of the old wooden closet in the hallway. The album, Its once rich mahogany hue, now faded with time, bore no ownership markings on the outside. Curiosity piqued. She carefully opened it. The brittle pages revealed a series of black and white photographs, memories frozen in time. They were portraits of the building's previous occupants, spanning several decades, perhaps even centuries. The men, women, and children captured in these images all wore solemn, almost grave expressions. A stark contrast to the cheerful, candid shots of today's world. As she leafed through, Amanda was transported to a different era. Men in sharp suits and women in elegant gowns, children in sailor suits and young girls in lacy dresses. But then, she froze. There, in the center of one page, was a photograph that sent a shiver down her spine. A young woman, her pose confident yet demure, stared directly at the camera. Her raven black hair, her hazel eyes, even the curve of her lips. It was like looking into a mirror. Amanda felt a knot tighten in her stomach. The resemblance was uncanny. Below the picture, in elegant cursive, read a single name and a date: Eleanor, 1932. A bewildering rush of emotions consumed Amanda. How was it possible? A doppelganger from nearly a century ago living in the same apartment? She hastily called Derek, her voice barely concealing her agitation. As he approached and saw the photograph, his face turned a shade paler. It's gotta be a coincidence, he murmured, though it sounded more like he was trying to convince himself than provide any comfort to Amanda. The weight of the discovery hung heavily between them, and they both knew their time in the Belmont building was about to uncover deeper mysteries than they could have ever anticipated. As darkness draped itself over the city, a heavy silence settled within the confines of apartment 9C. The events of the day had taken their toll, and Amanda and Derek had decided on an early night. The only source of light was the soft glow of a bedside lamp, casting elongated shadows across the room. However, just as the couple was on the brink of sleep, a soft, chilling whisper sliced through the quiet. "Return, return." The voice was ethereal, neither distinctly male nor female, and it seemed to drift in and out like a breeze. It was as if the very air around them was alive, carrying a plea from a time long forgotten. Derek, ever the protector, sprang out of bed. Trying to locate the origin, he moved stealthily around the apartment. He checked windows and doors, thinking perhaps someone outside was playing a cruel joke. Yet each time he thought he'd narrowed down the source, the voice seemed to shift, making it impossible to pinpoint. It was almost as if the walls themselves were breathing the words into existence. Meanwhile, Amanda, draped in her nightgown, sat up, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and fascination. The old photo of Eleanor, which she had placed on the bedside table, seemed to draw her in. As the whispers persisted, she felt an inexplicable urge to clutch the photograph, holding it close to her chest as if it were a protective talisman. The cold air around her seemed to grow even icier, and a sensation of profound sadness enveloped her. It felt as though the very soul of the apartment was reaching out, desperate to convey a message from the past. Derek returned to the room, his face etched with frustration and concern. "I can't find where it's coming from," he admitted, his voice betraying a hint of fear. Amanda, her fingers still tightly wrapped around the photograph, whispered, I think it's connected to this." She gestured to the image of Eleanor. The couple exchanged a look of understanding. They realized that whatever secrets the Belmont building held, they were now irrevocably intertwined with them. The whispers might have been their first encounter with the supernatural, but both sensed it wouldn't be their last. As days turned into a week in their new home, Amanda and Derek tried to establish a semblance of normalcy, despite the escalating paranormal occurrences around them. The Belmont building's grandeur now seemed overshadowed by its eerie atmosphere, with apartment 9C at the epicenter of the inexplicable. Throughout the day, objects would not remain where they were left. Books Amanda had meticulously organized would find themselves scattered on the floor. Derek's architectural blueprints would roll themselves up or shift from table to table. The fireplace, a once inviting feature of their living room, became unpredictable. Flames that roared mightily would suddenly be snuffed out, only to blaze back to life moments later without any apparent intervention. But it was the reflections in the large bay windows that most unnerved Amanda. During the day, when sunlight bathed the room, she would often catch glimpses of a ghostly figure. The apparition was faint and would vanish the moment Amanda tried to focus on it, leaving her questioning her own sanity. However, the most chilling event occurred one evening when Derek had gone out to meet a client. The apartment was bathed in twilight, and Amanda was engrossed in a book. Suddenly, a soft, haunting lullaby wafted through the air, its melody filled with both sorrow and love. The voice, delicate and mournful, beckoned her. Compelled to find its source, Amanda followed the sound, her heart thudding loudly against her chest. The song led her to the room they had earmarked as a nursery for future children, a room that was currently empty, save for the echoes of past residents. As she stepped in, the temperature plummeted, making her breath visible in the dim light. And there, against the far wall, was the shadowy silhouette of a woman, her form slightly translucent. She was gently cradling an infant in her arms, rocking back and forth as she sang the lullaby that had drawn Amanda in. Paralyzed by a mix of fear and fascination, Amanda watched the scene, feeling an immense wave of sadness. The ghostly mother, lost in her world, seemed to be reminiscing a time of joy and love, forever trapped in a loop of memories. When the song ended, the apparition slowly turned its gaze toward Amanda. Their eyes locked, and in that moment, Amanda felt an overwhelming surge of empathy. She realized that the spirits haunting their home weren't malevolent, but were trapped souls seeking solace, understanding, and perhaps release. As the uncanny events in the apartment continued to escalate, Derek's logical and analytical nature refused to let him accept them without seeking understanding. He became consumed with a need to know more about the Belmont building's past. Every spare moment he had, away from his work, was spent digging into old archives, newspapers, and city records, trying to piece together the narrative of their new home. He began frequenting the city's historic library, where Amanda worked, often spending hours poring over microfilms and talking to older residents who might have memories or stories related to the Belmont. The librarians, including Amanda's colleagues, took note of his fervor and aided in his quest, intrigued by his determination. It was during one such research session, deep within the library's catacombs, that Derek stumbled upon a tattered newspaper article from the 1930s. The headline spoke of a tragedy at the Belmont building, and as he read further, a chilling tale unfolded. The article detailed the life of a young woman named Eleanor, a resident of apartment 9C. Eleanor, with her raven black hair and captivating hazel eyes, had been the talk of the town for her beauty and grace. However, behind the beauty lay a tragic tale. Eleanor had given birth to a son, a baby who was the apple of her eye, but fate had dealt her a cruel hand. The infant, due to unforeseen complications, passed away merely weeks after being born. The town was abuzz with whispers of how Eleanor, once vibrant and full of life, became a shadow of her former self. She was often seen gazing longingly out of the bay windows of her apartment, her face etched with unspeakable sorrow. Friends and neighbors tried to console her, but the weight of her grief was too heavy. Unable to bear the pain, and with her world crumbling around her, Eleanor took the drastic step of ending her own life. Derek felt a lump in his throat as he read the final lines of the article. The story of Eleanor, her child, and their tragic end resonated with the hauntings they were experiencing. The lullaby Amanda had heard, the ghostly apparitions, and the sorrowful energy of the apartment all made sense now. Returning home that evening, he shared his findings with Amanda. As they sat together, the weight of the past pressing down on them, they realized that their home was not just walls and windows, but also a vessel of memories, love, and heartbreak. They needed to find a way to give Eleanor and her child the peace they so desperately sought. From the moment Amanda had laid eyes on the photograph of Eleanor, an inexplicable bond seemed to form between the two women. As days turned into nights, this connection only deepened, drawing Amanda into a labyrinth of emotions and memories that were not her own. Each night, as she closed her eyes, Vivid dreams transported Amanda back to the 1930s. She'd find herself walking the same corridors of the Belmont building, but they appeared newer, more vibrant. The sounds of soft jazz would waft through the air, mingled with distant laughter and conversations indicative of that era. In these dreams, Amanda was Eleanor. She felt the thrill of a dance, the soft fabric of period dresses against her skin, and the joy of holding her infant son close. But these dreams also brought the weight of Eleanor's grief. Amanda would wake up drenched in sweat, having experienced the soul-crushing despair Eleanor felt upon losing her child. Morning after morning, Derek would find Amanda pale and shaken, her eyes distant. Over breakfast, she'd recount these dreams, her voice trembling with a mix of wonder and fear. It became evident to Derek that the line between Amanda and Eleanor was blurring. At times, Amanda would use phrases or exhibit behaviors that were distinctly from the 1930s, like calling the refrigerator an icebox, or humming tunes popular during Eleanor's time. As days went by, Amanda's vitality seemed to diminish. Her once vibrant hazel eyes now looked haunted, and her complexion grew paler, almost translucent. She began to avoid mirrors, claiming she'd sometimes see Eleanor looking back at her instead of her own reflection. Meals went untouched, and she'd often be found gazing longingly out of the bay windows, much like Eleanor used to. Derek's heart ached watching his vibrant, lively wife become a shadow of her former self. He felt trapped in a waking nightmare, unable to pull Amanda back from the grasp of a spirit long gone. Their once joyful home was now suffused with an eerie silence, broken only by the occasional echoes of a lullaby from the past. His concern grew daily, watching Amanda become not just mentally, but physically intertwined with the spirit of Eleanor. He knew he needed to act swiftly, or he might lose Amanda to the grip of a time and tragedy that was not her own. A sense of urgency permeated apartment 9C. As the hauntings grew in intensity, Derek and Amanda felt they needed to address the lingering spirits and bring resolution, not just for their sake, but for Eleanor's as well. Through whispered recommendations and clandestine conversations, the name Miss Gray surfaced repeatedly. Known to be one of the city's most skilled mediums, her reputation was one of mystery, but also respect. Though skeptics scoffed at her abilities, many swore by her power to connect with the other side. After some deliberation, the couple decided to invite Miss Gray for a seance, hoping she could bridge the gap between the living and the departed. When she arrived, her presence commanded immediate attention. Miss Gray was a tall, slender woman with silvery hair pulled back tightly and piercing blue eyes that seemed to look straight through one's soul. She wore long, flowing robes, and around her neck hung an array of pendants and talismans. The seance was set for midnight, the hour believed to be the thinnest veil between realms. The living room was rearranged for the occasion, candles placed in a circle, incense burning, and the lights dimmed to near darkness. As everyone took their positions around the table, Miss Gray began her chants, her voice weaving a haunting melody that seemed to resonate with the very walls of the apartment. Almost immediately, a tangible shift was felt in the atmosphere. The room's temperature dropped drastically, causing the candles to flicker wildly. From the darkest corner of the room, a shadow began to materialize. It was Eleanor, her visage more defined than any previous apparitions, her eyes hollow with pain and longing, fixed on Amanda, who was gripping Derek's hand tightly. "You return, my baby," Eleanor whispered, her voice echoing with a mother's anguish. Her ethereal hand reached out, inching closer and closer to Amanda, whose heart raced with a mix of fear and sympathy. Miss Gray's eyes widened, sensing the dangerous turn the seance was taking. Drawing upon her years of experience and channeling all her energy, she stood abruptly, pointing a talisman in Eleanor's direction. "Eleanor!" she yelled with a force that seemed to shake the very foundation of the building. "Do not harm the living. Your pain is understood, but you must let go. Seek your child in the realms beyond and find peace together." The tension in the room was palpable, every moment stretching for an eternity as Eleanor's gaze wavered between Amanda and Miss Gray. The seance's outcome hung in the balance, the fates of both the living and the dead intertwined in a dance of wills. The atmosphere was thick with tension. As Eleanor's shadow emerged from the darkness, every candle flame in the room seemed to waver, as if reacting to her presence. Her ethereal form floated inches above the ground, casting a faint luminescence that bathed the room in a ghostly glow. For a long moment, all that could be heard was the soft crackling of the fireplace and the collective breaths of those present. Eleanor's eyes, brimming with decades of sadness and longing, fixed intently on Amanda. There was an uncanny resemblance between the two women, not just in appearance, but in the energy they exuded. As the silence stretched, Eleanor's lips moved, barely parting as she whispered, "You remind me of myself." Her voice, fragile and filled with melancholy, carried the weight of a lifetime of memories and regrets. Amanda, despite the fear and confusion, felt a pang of empathy. She remembered the dreams, the moments she had lived as Eleanor, and the overwhelming grief that had consumed the young mother from the past. Tears filled her eyes as she nodded, acknowledging the bond they inexplicably shared. As if responding to this silent communication, a subtle change came over the room. The icy chill that had dominated the space began to recede, replaced by a gentle warmth that seemed to emanate from Eleanor's form. The oppressive weight of sorrow and despair began to lift, replaced by an aura of hope and redemption. Eleanor's shadowy figure, which had been so distinct moments ago, started to become translucent. The edges began to waver, slowly dissolving into the surrounding air. But before she faded entirely, she leaned slightly forward, her gaze still locked with Amanda's. With a voice imbued with gratitude and a hint of newfound peace, she whispered her final words, "Thank you." And then, just as mysteriously as she had appeared, Eleanor was gone, leaving behind an apartment filled with a renewed sense of calm and a couple forever changed by their encounter with the past. The morning after Eleanor's final farewell, apartment 9C felt like it had undergone a transformation. Gone were the dark corners and the chilling drafts that seemed to seep through the walls. Sunlight streamed in through the large bay windows, casting a warm golden hue on the wooden paneling. The very air seemed to shimmer with a newfound freshness, as if the apartment had finally exhaled a heavy sigh it had held onto for decades. Despite the palpable change, Amanda and Derek couldn't shake off the events that had transpired. Every room, every corner held memories of whispered voices, fleeting shadows, and eerie lullabies. The fireplace, where they had spent cozy evenings, now served as a reminder of the time it spontaneously extinguished and relit. Each creak of the wooden floor brought back memories of ghostly footfalls echoing through the night. The decision to move was mutual. While they were grateful for the peace that had been restored, they felt that they needed a fresh start, somewhere untouched by the shadows of the past. They packed their belongings, their fingers often brushing against objects that had inexplicably moved during their haunted days. With each packed box, they hoped to leave behind the unsettling memories and embark on a new chapter in their lives. The Belmont building, with its grandeur and historic charm, quickly caught the eye of new potential renters. A few years had passed since Amanda and Derek's departure when a young, enthusiastic couple stepped into its marble-floored lobby. They were eager to start their life in the city and had heard about the Belmont's prestigious reputation. 9C is available, the agent mentioned, a hint of hesitation in his voice. It's a beautiful apartment with a rich history, but there have been stories. The young man looked intrigued, but it was the woman, with her bright hazel eyes that sparkled with a mix of curiosity and skepticism, who responded. "We don't believe in ghosts," she laughed, her voice echoing slightly in the grand corridor. The agent smiled, though there was a subtle weight to his expression, a knowledge of things unsaid. "Very well," he replied, unlocking the door to 9C. As they entered, a fleeting shadow seemed to dance at the edge of the agent's vision, but he dismissed it, attributing it to a trick of the light. Unbeknownst to them, the walls of apartment 9C held stories, and history has a way of echoing through time. The cycle, it seemed, was poised to begin anew.